right, so I have two articles for you today. The first one is from CNN and it concerns Alligator Alcatraz. And the second one is apparently the UN is transphobic. Which, great. Why not? But anyway, we are starting with Alligator Alcatraz. Florida lawmakers allowed into Alligator Alcatraz say detainees packed into cages. And I've seen so many horrible, horrible comments of people saying, yes, so don't do the crime if you can't do the time type shit. And it's like, number one, a lot of these people didn't do a crime. And even if they did, seriously? You're telling me that you think it would be perfectly okay if all prisons were like this. I'm not sure you know what you are saying. Or are you saying that it's only is like that for should be like that for brown people? It just tells you how horrible these people are. But anyway, to the article. Deep in the hazardous and ecologically fragile Everglades, hundreds of migrants are confined in cages in a makeshift tent detention facility Florida's Republican governor calls safe and secure, and Democratic lawmakers call inhumane. Which, to be honest, aren't mutually exclusive. 2 days after filing a lawsuit against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for being unlawfully denied entry to inspect conditions at the facility dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, members of Congress and state representatives were given a limited tour Saturday to inspect conditions after calling the lack of access a deliberate obstruction meant to hide what's really happening behind those gates, according to a joint statement from lawmakers. They said they heard detainees shouting for help and crying "Libertad," Spanish for freedom, amid sweltering heat, bug infestations, and meager meals. They are essentially packed into cages, wall-to-wall humans. 32 detainees per cage, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who represents Florida's 25th Congressional District, said during a news conference following their tour. The families of some of the detainees have also decried conditions in the facility, while Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials defend it as offering higher detention standards than many U.S. prisons. Okay, number one, if that is true, that is not the flex you think it is. And number two, bullshit, because Americans would be up in fucking arms if prisons were like this. You would hear about prisons being like this and people losing their shit over it. So, it's possible there might be some. I mean, I've heard horror stories about detention centers, but at the same time, it gets called out because it's inhumane. And we literally have an amendment to the Constitution against cruel and unusual punishment. So, yeah. On the tour, the lawmakers said they were not allowed to visit areas where migrants are currently being detained, but instead were shown cells not yet being used. Because nothing says we have nothing to hide than to not show them the people who are in the cells. Yep. Wasserman Schultz said each cage contained 3 small toilets with attached sinks, which detainees use for drinking water and brushing their teeth, sharing the same water used to flush the toilets. Now, I'm not going to criticize this one so much because my understanding is that that's how bathrooms work. I could be wrong. So if I am, let me know. I'm perfectly willing to accept that I could be wrong. Maybe it's used to be that way back in the olden days, or maybe it's still like that. But I mean, unless you're saying that the water is actually filled with fecal matter or urine, I don't know. I mean, just because it's attached, is it really the same water? I don't know. I really don't know. But it's not a good look either way. I mean, at least detach the two things. What the hell? When they toured the kitchen area, Wasserman Schultz said government employees were being offered large pieces of roast chicken and sausages, while the detainees' lunch consisted of a gray turkey and cheese sandwich, an apple, and chips. I don't see how that could possibly sustain them nutritionally or not make them hungry, Wasserman Schultz said. And when you have hungry people, obviously their mood changes. Or they learn from CCOT that if you keep people starving, then they can't cause trouble because they don't have the fucking energy. So that's another interpretation. But yeah, the mood changes as well. Hangry is a thing. Representative Maxwell Alejandro Frost, who was also on the tour, said the lawmakers were concerned about reports of unhygienic conditions due to toilets not working and feces being spread everywhere, but were denied access from viewing units where migrants are currently detained. Okay. Now that changes the dual sink toilet thing substantially. If the toilets are clogged, obviously there's going to be fecal matter everywhere because duh. Now this is supposed to be a new facility and already the toilets suck. Either they rushed construction and because of that it's shoddy workmanship, which is a thing, or highly likely this is the goal. They want people to be miserable, possibly get sick, die because, they're brown people. It's not like they're important or anything. They were also not permitted to view the medical facilities, with officials citing HIPAA laws, despite lawmakers being allowed to examine the medical facilities and other detention facilities, he said. Okay, HIPAA doesn't say shit about the privacy of medical facilities. You just cannot access a person's private medical information. That these politicians weren't asking for access to medical information. They were asking to access the facilities. Not the same thing. And if you're citing HIPAA laws, then either you don't understand HIPAA laws, the fact that the Democrats didn't object, maybe they don't know about HIPAA laws, which they really should, or better yet, they just didn't want to show them the facilities. It's probably a torture chamber. It is something everyone, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or anything, should be deeply ashamed of, Frost said. Immigrants don't poison the blood of this nation. They are the blood of this nation. Exactly. I remember overhearing when I was at a food pantry, working at a food pantry, I overheard a conversation in the computer room where someone couldn't understand why people would say that someone is Spanish American or Canadian American or whatever it is. And the fact of the matter is we are a nation of immigrants. So a lot of people bring their culture to the U.S. and it blends in. We are a melting pot. So if you're Venezuelan, certain things that you bring from Venezuela is going to eventually become part of the greater fabric of America. Same thing if you're, say, Iranian or if you are Italian. That is how melting pots work. Or as Canadians say, a tapestry. Either one works. It's the same concept. This idea that it all blends together for this country. And so to say that, why don't you just say American, implies that there is a culture outside of what the immigrants bring that is uniquely American. American culture started and keeps evolving because of the immigrants that are brought in. So there's nothing wrong with them saying that, I'm Slovak American or I'm this or I'm that, because you're just acknowledging that your family came from somewhere else and that culture is a part of you, because it just melts with the rest of American culture, but there is something about you that's unique to you. So, yeah. So, yes, immigrants are the blood of this nation. We're a nation of immigrants. I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand. U.S. Representative Darren Soto said lawmakers also witnessed evidence of flooding, highlighting serious concerns of what could happen to detainees if there's severe weather during what forecasters said may be a busy hurricane season. Oh, that's okay. The Trump administration is working at getting rid of all the forecasters, so that won't be a problem. Seriously? Do you honestly think that if they're being put in something called Alligator Alcatraz and people, Trump and his cronies making fun of escapees being eaten by alligators, do you think they really give a shit if they die in a flood? Of course not. Cruelty is the point. We keep saying that and it's become cliche, but it's the truth. They do not care about these people. Anyway, what we saw in our inspection today was a political stunt, dangerous and wasteful, Soto said after the tour. One can't help but understand and conclude that this is a total cruel political stunt meant to have a spectacle of political theater, and it's wasting taxpayer dollars and putting our ICE agents, our troops, and our ICE detainees in jeopardy. Okay. I object to this being called a political stunt and a spectacle and political theater. Because in order for that to be true, there would have to be only people in the cages only for a photo op. And then they're sent to the real prison. These people are being kept there. So to say that this is political theater is no. I mean, if they paraded them in front of the politicians, but the fact that they kept the politicians separated from the people in the facility shows that this is not meant to be political theater. This is just cruelty. It's definitely wasting taxpayer dollars. I will agree with that. But putting ICE agents, our troops, and ICE detainees in jeopardy? ICE detainees, absolutely. But how does it put ICE agents and troops in danger? That I'm unclear on. About 900 people are currently detained at the facility, Wasserman Schultz said during the news conference, but it has a capacity to hold 3,000 people, with room for more, according to Kevin Guthrie, executive director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. The wife of a 43-year-old Guatemalan man currently detained at Alligator Alcatraz told CNN her husband is enduring harsh conditions similar to those described by lawmakers who toured the facility. After more than 2 weeks in detention, she said, he has yet to see a lawyer. And I have heard that the way the system is set up, the lawyers just cannot get a hold of their clients. That they keep getting the runaround whenever they try to get a hold of someone who can patch them through to their clients. So, not only is this a cruel conditions, but they also want to make it impossible for due process. Obviously, they can just claim that stupidity on the lawyer's part or something. But, to get around the fact that they obviously are not offering due process. But they are not offering due process if the lawyers cannot get a hold of their clients. There are too many mosquitoes. He's in a really bad condition. The power goes off at times because they're using generators, the woman told CNN in an interview Tuesday. You can easily laugh at there are too many mosquitoes, but where I live, there's a creek not that far away. And so it's a feeding frenzy for mosquitoes this time of the year. And it is absolutely annoying how many mosquitoes are in our backyard. You don't have to stay there very long to be eaten alive. Actually, my mom gets, some sort of allergic reaction or something to the mosquitoes sometimes. So yeah, it sounds like it's funny to say mosquitoes, like what's the big deal? But number one, mosquitoes can be hella annoying, especially if there's a ton of them. Like I said, you want to run away from your backyard, from our backyard, and I'm sure we don't have nearly as many mosquitoes as it is here. I heard that there was a journalist who was wearing long sleeves and a hood because there were just so many freaking mosquitoes that even though it's 90 degrees out, they were trying to protect themselves. So that's just crazy. Plus mosquitoes, depending on which mosquitoes we're talking about, carry diseases. So again, not a laughing matter. They're using generators. Now, we have a generator for times when there's a power outage. They were not meant to be the only power source. They are meant to be a backup. So, yeah, not a good look. Not a good look at all. They obviously wanted to make something as cheap as possible, and they don't care about the cruelty because, again, cruelty is the point. The detainees are being held in tents and it's very hot there. They're in bad conditions. There's not enough food. Sick people are not getting medication. Every time I ask about his situation, he tells me it's bad, she said. Yep, none of that surprises me. I mean, if the toilets are constantly clogged, there's going to be fecal matter everywhere. Of course you're going to get sick. And of course there's not enough food because they learned from CCOT. I heard that one of the first detainees here, is one of the dreamers. This is the whole point of being a dreamer, is that you're not put in this situation. The Guatemalan woman said she, her husband, and their 11-month-old baby went fishing on June 25th in the Everglades. A Florida wildlife officer approached them and asked for documents. Her husband had a valid driver's license, she said, but when the officer realized she didn't have any documents proving she was in the country legally, the officer called immigration authorities, who detained the whole family. So why is he in Alligator Alcatraz and they're not? Not that I want her and an 11-month-old baby in Alligator Alcatraz, but why is he being detained if he's fine? After spending 7.5 hours in what she described as a dirty holding cell, she and her baby, a U.S. citizen, were released, but her husband was detained. She now wears an ankle bracelet. Her husband later told her he remained in detention at the Dania Beach Jail near Fort Lauderdale for 8 days before being transferred to Alligator Alcatraz. Again, why are we holding him? He had proof that he was here legally. Why is he the one in Alligator Alcatraz? Again, not that I think the mother should have been put in there, but isn't the point that, you want to send the undocumented away? I'm not sure why we're punishing the husband then. Once transferred, he was unable to take a shower for 6 days, and there were not enough facilities for washing hands, she said. On Friday, he was woken up at 3 a.m. to take a shower because of the number of people waiting for their turn, she said. The Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the Florida detention facility, did not immediately reply to CNN's request for comment about specific allegations about conditions there. In a written statement posted on X Tuesday, DHS said ICE has higher detention standards than most U.S. prisons that hold actual U.S. citizens. All detainees are provided with proper meals, medical treatment, and have opportunities to communicate with lawyers and their family members. Right. Because you can believe what puppy killer Kristi Noem has to say. In a little over a week, workers transformed the Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport from an 11,000-foot runway into a temporary tent city President Trump toured last week. Trump raved about the facility's incredible quick construction during his visit and pointed to the detention center as an example of what he wants to implement in many states. Oh, good. The project was fast-tracked under an executive order from DeSantis, who framed illegal immigration as a state emergency. This is the same guy who begged migrants not to leave Florida when he cracked down on illegal immigration because it was just him playing politics. And now he's doing this shit. I mean, he saw what happens in his state when you crack down on undocumented workers. Your state fucking shuts down. You don't get fruit picked. You don't get construction. I mean, I do not know what is wrong with these people. Did they not get enough hugs as kids? What is wrong with them? Seriously, what is wrong with that? It is just, ugh. Anyway, that is the end of that article. So next, we have a report from The Advocate. UN draft report uses pseudoscience to claim gender dysphoria is socially contagious. Oh, goody goody. Rapid onset dysphoria is coming up. Guys, that's not a thing. This ranks up there with people thinking that when a kid reads a book or learns about being trans, that's what made them trans, even though it could possibly be that they just learned something about themselves and made a realization. It's the same thing with this rapid onset dysphoria. That's not a thing. It's just that like-minded people tend to find their way together. Or, they might meet someone who is comfortable in their own skin and comfortable acknowledging that they're trans, and then they realize, oh, maybe it's all right for me to be this way. It's not the same as anyone convincing anyone of shit. All right. The United Nations has compiled a draft report that uses pseudoscience to wrongly claim that transgender acceptance erases the legal category of women, and that gender dysphoria is somehow socially contagious. Okay, how in the world is it erasing the legal category of women? And do trans men also do that? Because, again, why is it that people are so fucking fixated on trans women? Oh, I get it with trans sports, with women's sports, because there are reputable studies out there that say that male puberty does confer an advantage. Okay, I get that. But this is just talking about trans people in general, and it is still concentrating on trans women. What is wrong with people? Do we not know that trans men exist? Because otherwise, you'd be erasing the legal category of men too. Trans men are doing that. But that's not what's happening. Seriously, how in the world is it erasing any legal category? It's not. Trans women never claimed to be just like cis women. Now, are there many similarities between them and cis women in the sense that they're both women? Yes. Does that mean that they're saying that they've gone through the same things as cis women? No. They'll never have periods. They'll never get pregnant. They'll never They'll never have grown up being told that they need to play with dolls instead of Hot Wheels or whatever. There's so many things about being a girl and a woman that is different for trans women when they finally transition. They're not saying that they're exactly the same. Nobody is saying that. They're just saying that they are also women. Because let's face it, not all women have to deal with the same shit as other women. Some women deal with more sexism than others. Some women deal with out and out misogyny. Other women do not. So, no, this is not erasing shit. The preliminary report on sex-based violence against women and girls from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights lumps in recent advancements in trans rights with actual physical and sexual violence as issues facing women and girls today, claiming that trans people denied their rightful recognition as a distinct category in law and society. Again, how? How do they do that? And what do you mean they lump in trans rights with actual physical and sexual violence issues facing women? Are they saying that trans rights causes that? Or are they saying it's on the same level? I do not understand that sentence. Compiled by Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, Reem Al-Salam, the report also highlights the supposed harmful consequences of social and medical transitioning of children. Of course it does. Al-Salam referred to gender dysphoria as socially contagious and recommended banning gender-affirming care for anyone under the age of 18. Okay, I wonder if this article is going to give us this person's reasons for things like, what's the harmful consequence of social and medical transitioning? Now, medical transitioning can come with consequences, obviously. Some of them could be harmful in the sense that if you talk to trans people, their transition isn't always going to be a picnic. It's not going to always be easy. That's not necessarily the same as saying that transitioning itself is harmful. Because all in all, most people who transition are happy with the results. But social transitioning, how is that harmful? What harmful consequences are there for social transitioning? Except for, being around douche nuggets. And how in the hell do you claim that gender dysphoria is socially contagious? And tell me why it's rapid onset dysphoria, which does not exist. And the fact that this dipshit says that they recommend banning gender-affirming care, well, you could have seen that coming. The Special Rapporteur's draft report perpetuates inaccurate and harmful assumptions about transgender people. Executive Director of Outright International, Maria Sodin, told The Advocate, "Women and girls face violence, including sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and practices like female and intersex genital mutilation because of patriarchal power structures and rigid gender norms, not because of the existence or legal recognition of trans people." Exactly. Women didn't start getting raped just because trans people exist. I mean, granted, trans people have always existed, but openly existing. It's not like the Western society didn't have rapes until people discovered trans people exist. Not how this works. Meanwhile, the rates of femicide and gender-based violence affecting trans women and girls are alarmingly high. By misplacing the blame for violence against women onto an already marginalized group, the Special Rapporteur lets patriarchy off the hook and ultimately undermines the safety and dignity of the very women and girls she is mandated to protect, Shodin said. Well, okay, we know this person is female. Okay, that's good to know, but no less disturbing, actually possibly even more so. The so-called rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis, called it, that claims being trans is a trend, has long been debunked as junk science. The entire theory is based on a single poster abstract in 2017 by Lisa Littman. Poster abstracts are often published when the material is not only too weak to be a journal article, but of insufficient quality to even be accepted for oral presentation at a conference. Littman herself has admitted that it is not a formal diagnosis. In 2022, a 2022 study in pediatrics found that out of 91,937 adolescents in 2017 and 105,437 in 2019, the total percentage of those who identified as trans decreased from 2.4% in 2017 to 1.6% in 2019, which would not support the social contagion hypothesis. Researchers concluded that ROGD, or rapid onset gender dysphoria, should not be used to restrict the provision of gender affirming medical care. Okay, so not only is that now, we know that's bullshit. Again, just because someone who feels like they're trans, who thinks they're trans, and they happen to find a group that are also part of the LGBT community, some who may be trans, can give them the confidence to accept themselves, is not rapid onset gender dysphoria. It's just people finding out about themselves. Because let's face it, people tend to hang out with people who are like them. I never hung out with the popular kids because they talked about vapid things like clothes and makeup and boys, and I found all of that horribly boring. So I found people who didn't talk about that. I mean, that's just the way things work. You find people to be friends with who share your interests. So if you end up with a group of trans people being friends, well, that's just because they found a friend group of similarities, not because any one of them influenced the others to become trans. That's not how this works. While ROGD claims that young people are identifying as trans rather than as gay, lesbian, or bisexual because they see being trans as being more socially acceptable, which isn't a thing. Yes, I want to become the most marginal minority group and hated by even the rest of the letters of the community. Yeah, that's the ticket. That's more socially acceptable. How damaged is your brain exactly? There is no data to show that trans youth find more acceptance than LGBT youth. Actually, I'm pretty sure they find less. What the hell? Because there is literally an LGBT alliance. So, even though trans people were the ones who led the charge at Stonewall, there is an LGBT alliance because, we have to be transphobic, I guess, because we need the transphobes to like us or something. I'm not sure why you'd want a bunch of bigots to like you, but okay. Conversely, trans people are more likely to be the victim of violence than their LGBT peers. Yeah. And are significantly more likely to be the victim of violence than the perpetrator. Not that that's ever affected a transphobe's version of reality. And again, it's completely ignoring trans men in this report. I mean, I would absolutely love to, like in Congress, have a trans man go into the bathroom and have Nancy Mace die of a fucking heart attack because she can't handle that a man is in the bathroom with her. Oh, but I thought you said that it's trans women that you're afraid of. Anyway. The American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the World Medical Association, and the World Health Organization all agree that gender-affirming care is evidence-based and medically necessary, not just for adults but minors as well. Out of 55 peer-reviewed studies, not a single one found that gender transition has negative outcomes. But, when have transphobes, or any bigot for that matter, ever cared about facts? Al-Salam, also praised a recent ruling in the United Kingdom determining that trans women aren't considered women under the nation's Equality Act. Anti-trans group For Women Scotland challenged a 2018 Scottish law that legally recognized trans women as women, initially losing its case before appealing to the UK Supreme Court, which usurped Scotland's national sovereignty to rule in its favor in April. Now, for those who don't understand, now I'm probably going to mess this up a little bit, but the UK is made up of countries, not states, countries. Scotland being one of them. So they have, and one of the conditions to keep Scotland in the UK was to give them more sovereignty over their own country. So, yeah, this not a good look. That overall the UK is saying that, oh yeah, we actually can trump your law. Because I don't think they have things the way the US does, where federal law supersedes state law. It sounds to me like, no, that's not how the UK works, but like I said, I don't know exactly how it does, so all right. The country's Equality and Human Rights Commission issued guidance shortly after the ruling that banned trans people from single-sex facilities, in some cases even those that match their sex assigned at birth. I'm sorry, what? Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also called on public agencies to enforce the ruling by banning trans people from facilities that align with their gender identities. Okay. Some have already applied it, including the Football Association, which banned trans women from playing women's soccer in May. Now, Keir Starmer has gotten a lot of flack for this. On the one hand, following what the UK Supreme Court said. On the other hand, maybe you should fight for changing the law so the UK Supreme Court would have to change its ruling. Because law does not equal morality. Once upon a time, in the UK and in the US, slavery was legal. People didn't just throw up their hands and say, oh, well, it's the law, we can't do anything about it. No, people fought against it. So the fact that Keir Starmer is not fighting against it, well, trans people at one point thought that the Labour Party was a good alternative to the Conservatives. I wonder what the Liberal Democrats, what their position on trans people is, because, yeah, not a good thing. Meanwhile, hate crimes against trans people have increased almost 200% in the last 5 years in England and Wales, according to the UK government. Imagine that! The courts and laws are vilifying trans people, and so somehow that flows into hate crimes. Who would have thunk? I thought there was something else I wanted to mention about the single sex. Now, what I don't understand is even those that match their sex assigned at birth. So where the hell are trans people supposed to use the bathroom? If they can't use the one that comports with their gender, nor the one that comports with their sex assigned at birth. Now, it's possible there could be a family bathroom that, or maybe a single stall bathroom or something, some alternative, but not all facilities, I don't know about the UK, but not all facilities in the US have that. Most facilities have either a men's room or a women's room. They do not have a family bathroom or a unisex bathroom. I mean a single stall bathroom. They don't have those things. So where are trans people supposed to use the bathroom? All right. Transgender people, like all people, are who they are and have always been here. But this report is loaded with stigmatization, outright false, and downright bizarre theories about the existence of transgender people that are detached from science and divorced from reality, a spokesperson for the Human Rights Campaign said. On top of that, the report is a cruel detour from the Commission's stated purpose of addressing the real pervasive forms of sex discrimination that women and girls face globally. Well, obviously, trans people are an easy scapegoat because, it's hard to actually tackle misogyny and sexism and violence against women and girls. So it's much easier to attack trans women because there are so many strong voices against trans women, it's obvious that we're going to just go there. I have no idea about who this person is who wrote this report, but it is so horrible, so terrible, that I'm surprised that the UN actually employs this person. The truth remains, gender-affirming care is best practice, medically necessary care endorsed by every major American health association, they continued. And for so many people, it is life-saving care. We should all be on the side of advancing people's freedom to get the care they need. And that is the crux of it. That is the TLDR. Even if you don't feel comfortable with trans people, you don't understand them, which I don't fully understand it either, but there's a lot of things I don't understand that I still accept that is reality. The fact of the matter is, science accepts that trans people exist, that gender dysphoria exists, and that they have a proper procedure of how to help trans people get the care they need and to transition properly. And I don't know why people are so anti-science. And like I've mentioned in previous videos, if you are anti-medical science in any capacity, whether it be vaccines or trans people or whatever, don't ever go to the doctor ever, because you're basically saying that you only trust medical science that you feel like you're comfortable with because you understand it, so you're going to go with that. That is not what expertise means. Expertise means that people know things you don't. So you don't have to understand vaccines. You don't have to understand trans people. You don't have to understand any biological theory. You just need to know that doctors do. And so they will provide you with the best care that they can. It is not your job to tell doctors that you know better than them about X, Y, and Z. If you happen to be trans and you want the best care possible, but you don't feel comfortable with certain suggestions that your doctor makes, and let's face it, doctors will give you all your options and the potential side effects to those options. And if you decide on one course of action over another, that's fine. But that is your business because you are the one who it affects. Nobody else but you and your doctor get to say what you can do, what medical procedures you need to live your best life. It is just unreal how many people feel the need to tell others how they should feel about their bodies, how they should feel about, doing this with their life, doing that with their life. Not your business. Not your business at all. So, anyway, that is the end of that article. So, with that, I will see you guys in the next video.